It had long been evening outside, but the light from one of the windows of the student dormitory illuminated the dark street. Frantically clutching his cell phone in his hands, Michael could not believe that he had just received a message from his girlfriend with information about the end of their relationship. He made his last attempts to establish communication, typing message after message, and talking about how good they would be together. But this did not change the girl's decision, and in the end, Michael saw that she had blocked his contact. Noticing Michael's strange behavior, his roommates asked if he was okay, to which the young man replied something not entirely intelligible. But a moment later, Michael suddenly hit the table with his fist as hard as he could. And without saying a word, he stood up and quickly left the room, dropping his chair and half-eaten Chinese noodles, and his neighbors already realized that their friend had been abandoned once again. Where this time, it was one of the beauties of the institute, Veronica, who broke off relations with Michael. Meanwhile, Michael had already managed to reach the place where they intended to meet and discuss everything before the girl sent him a message about the breakup, where he was still lucky to meet the dazzling Veronica. Remembering the joyful beginning of their relationship, the young man holding out a bag of goodies began to persuade the girl not to end it, claiming that he was ready to change. If something doesn't suit her about him. But the merciless girl did not leave him a chance, saying that they did not hold any grudge against Michael, but simply realized that her ex-boyfriend needed more and wanted to get along with him. Such a statement greatly hurt the young man, who would have been ready to accept his imperfection, but could not believe that he had given in to another, and not the best option, who had already managed to deceive Veronica several times in the past. At this time, a luxury expensive car pulled up to the side of the road. The side window on the passenger side rolled down, and the man sitting behind the wheel smugly invited the girl to sit in the cabin. Veronica did not keep her waiting, and finally told Michael that it was better for them not to meet again, and not communicate at all. After these words, the girl got into the car and the car quickly sped off, taking with it the last hopes of the young man, and leaving him completely alone on the streets of the night city. After thinking for a few minutes, Michael threw away the goodies he had bought for Veronica, and walked away. He walked around the city at night for a long time, and finally decided to go to the supermarket. Washing down his grief with mineral water, the young man thought about why girls generally don't appreciate the sincerity of guys. He didn't know where to take out his anger, and squeezed the empty bottle with all his might. Rage and anger literally overwhelmed his entire being, and Michael decided that he would no longer behave politely, and follow the girl's lead, but would make them run after him, and then something happened. Some voice from outside first said that the connection to the master system was completed, then a transparent screen appeared before the young man's eyes, on which his name was written. Information about the absence of enhancements was contained, and the account balance was listed as $90 billion. Shocked by what was happening, the young man tried to touch the screen, and at the same moment heard an indignant female voice calling him a pervert, and pointing out the need to watch his hands. Michael, who had not yet come to his senses, tried to figure out what was happening around him. And finally, he saw the dissatisfied face of the girl, who was now saying that the young man was not all right in his head. And the voiceover announced the name and age of this girl, and also announced that her relationship to Michael was minus 50 points. Until now, Michael, unaware of anything, simply stood there, his mouth open in surprise. And the voice continued, saying that he needs to spend money on girls, and as soon as the girl's attitude rating towards Michael reaches plus 96 points, she will become his fan. From what he heard, the young man experienced an even greater shock, and could not believe that just like that he was given 90 billion and told to spend it. And meanwhile, the voice asked the question whether to launch the game, warning that this money can only be spent on girls. But after the unknown person said that the master would get back 1/10 of what he spent on the girls, and that additional skills would appear, the young man's answer was already predictable, where he immediately set his first goal. Putting on his most good-natured face, Michael told the girl not to be angry for his behavior, and in order to compensate for her bad mood, he was ready to buy whatever she wanted. While the girl listened to Michael's words, a voiceover announced the successful activation of the game, and said that the reward for completing the action would also be gain points, which can be spent on improving one's strength, dexterity, and spirit. Having heard the cherished words about shopping, the girl did not really believe that such a nondescript guy had at least some means, but she stated this, just in case, with caution and a touch of humor. Michael examined the slender body of Angelica, who was listed at the institute as the first beauty of the art department. And without hesitation, he answered that the girl should just try to ask, and not throw around words out of ignorance. After these words, the girl said that she wanted to treat all the students of her faculty, and therefore she needed financial help. She thought to herself that this beggar was simply trying not to disgrace himself in the eyes of others, and she needed to disgrace him. But before she had time to finish her thought, she received a notification on her phone that $1,000 had been transferred to her account. This forced Angelica to voice the amount, which attracted the attention of supermarket visitors. While Michael stood there and thought that $1,000 was not such a big amount. The pleasantly surprised girl concluded that she had come across a real rich man. Such a fat wallet definitely could not be missed, and Angelica had already formed an action plan. Turning Michael's phone towards her, she quickly added herself to him as a friend on the social network with quick movements of her fingers. And then almost getting close to the face of Michael, who had not yet gotten used to his new role. The girl said that she wanted to take a walk with him to the same place, where she would see how long he would last. The evening city lived its own vibrant nightlife. Heading to one of the most expensive boutiques, Angelica said that she was not a materialistic girl at all, but wanted to understand how serious the young man was towards her. And Michael only thought that the more money she spent, the greater his own winnings would be. So the words about seriousness and commercialism did not really bother him. Michael said out loud that he was ready to do anything for Angelica, and she could choose any things without denying herself anything. They were already inside the boutique when the newly rich man, looking at women's handbags, suddenly heard a very familiar voice behind him. It was Veronica who, standing in front of her old new boyfriend, tried on a new handbag. Michael looked carefully at the face of the one who just a couple of hours ago exchanged him for another and abandoned him in the middle of a dark street. Michael loved this girl, and notes of true sadness now crept into his soul. Noticing the young man's attention towards the other girl, Angelica quickly reminded herself, saying that now was probably not the time since his ex was here. To which the young man replied that this could not interfere with them at all, and the girl could calmly continue to choose things for herself. Satisfied with the successful circumstances, Angelica turned to the consultant with a question about the availability of a fashionable handbag for sale, which was the subject of everyone's attention at the spring show of new models. To which the consultant responded positively, saying that the last such handbag was now being tried on by another girl, pointing in Veronica's direction. At that moment, Veronica noticed Michael and, thinking that he was continuing to pursue her, decided to teach him a lesson, disgracing him in front of everyone in the store for being a beggar. Turning to her boyfriend, whose name was Mason, she asked if he remembered that she would have a birthday soon. To which Mason noted with surprise that the girl celebrated her birthday quite recently. To which the resourceful Veronica stated that then there was a holiday according to the lunar calendar, and now she will celebrate her birthday according to the solar one. Mason, who found himself in a hopeless situation, began to say that he did not like materialistic girls, and asked if Veronica was with him now for the sake of money. This statement took the girl by surprise, and she could not find what to answer. At that moment, Angelica approached her from behind and carefully took the purse in her hand. Taking advantage of the girl's confusion, Angelica took her purse with a light and agile movement. And Michael, without wasting any time, paid for the purchase at that very moment. And while the satisfied girl was enjoying the new thing, the voiceover announced 3 times that she was adding plus 20 points to the girl's position. Michael also beamed with happiness, having immediately received plus 60 points just for buying some kind of handbag, and deciding that at this rate, it would not be difficult to achieve the desired result. At the same time, he mentally noted that his personal financial benefit from the transactions could have been greater. Looking at the homely-looking rich man in the face of Michael, the store consultants recalled the words of the director that one should not be biased towards people based only on their appearance. And Veronica, who had lost her purse, stood with her eyes lowered to the floor. Angelica, on the contrary, was happy, noting that both the purse and the guy with the money were now taken by a better owner than Veronica. She looked in fascination at the simple guy looking at the handbags, and again came to the idea that this jackpot should not be missed. Approaching Michael, she gently grabbed his hand and began to thank him for his generosity, calling him dear, which the young man did not expect, and was a little embarrassed. Veronica looked at this whole scene with tears in her eyes. Saying that this young man's behavior had crossed all boundaries, Veronica pushed Michael away and rushed out of the store. But he mentally noted that this was just the beginning. At that moment, a familiar voice announced that Veronica is the second object, and currently her attitude towards the master is -10. Listening to this, Michael watched as Mason took off from his seat. And he ran after the girl, rushing away from the boutique, where none of the participants in the action heard how Michael was promised a reward of 20 game points when Veronica's attitude towards the owner reaches 96 points. And Angelica, who did not miss her chance, clung to the young man, asking where they would go now. To which Michael, who had a taste of the game, replied that only where he could spend money, since he would never believe that one handbag would be enough for a girl. In one boutique, Michael pointed out the most expensive dress. In the other, for the most elegant and incredibly expensive jewelry. And everywhere he invariably paid with the very card that appeared to him after he agreed to participate in the game. Being in some kind of positive state of shock, Angelica, of course, did not hear how the voiceover announced that her disposition towards the master had improved by another 5 points. Buying new expensive perfume, and another 5 points are added to your favor. Then the cosmetics department, and again, 5 points added to Angelica's location. Numerous clothing boutiques also invariably added favorability points. Finally, the girl herself said that she's probably had enough this time, because all this simply won't fit into her small apartment. To which Michael simply replied that this was not a problem, since he would immediately buy the girl a new spacious apartment. However, the girl suddenly said that this would somehow be too much, because this was their first meeting where she just wanted to joke. And Michael was immediately announced that the girl's favor had dropped by -5 points. This forced the young man to be distracted from searching for an apartment, where he came to the conclusion that the application to purchase an apartment was indeed unnecessary, and only frightened the girl. He quickly found himself approaching Angelica and naming her full details. The department where she studies, her favorite color, zodiac sign, favorite food and favorite movie, which left her completely confused. Then he said that he was very passionate about her, which made him behave so recklessly. Having finished his speech, he turned to the store consultant and asked to open an account in Angelica's name, where he would deposit $50,000, and asked to offer her only the best the next time she visited the store. And again, he turned to Angelica, saying that in this way, he hoped to make amends to her for his bad joke about buying an apartment. Blushing from everything that happened for 1 minute, the girl stood unable to say anything. And Michael, who continued to play his role, came close to her and whispered in her ear that if the girl was embarrassed by his gifts, then she could offer him something in return. This had the desired effect, and the girl finally came to life, pushing the young man away and jokingly calling him a pervert, which prompted the announcement that plus 30 points had been added to the girl's favor. Michael, not noticing the admiring glances of the consultants, literally ready to throw themselves on his neck, concluded that if you are rich, then you will get away with anything. And Angelica suddenly asked why the young man shouldn't think about himself after he bought her so many gifts, to which Michael simply and without a twinge of conscience replied that he did not have money to buy things for himself. The dazzling Angelica gently took the young man by the hand, and saying that now it was her turn to give gifts, pulled the young man along with her, looking at him with an alluring gaze. First, the girl took him to boutiques with men's clothing, and then they started doing the young man's hair. And so after all these manipulations, a completely different person appeared on the street. Angelica enthusiastically noted how attractive this young man really is, and Michael himself said that he now feels somehow strange and not very confident. To which Angelica, approaching the young man, said in a gentle voice, and with no less gentle movements, that there was nothing strange, and they made a very beautiful couple. But then she let go of his hand and began to move away. Throwing a goodbye kiss, the girl said that they would see each other later, and that she was so happy today that she almost decided that she had fallen in love. And Michael was told that according to the results of today's meeting at Angelica, her disposition had become plus 68 points. There were fewer and fewer illuminated windows in the dorm. Opening the door to the room, Michael entered shining like a new scent, whose appearance made his neighbors surprised. When asked what he was doing all this time, Michael replied that he went on a date with Angelica. To which his neighbors began vying with each other to be indignant that he had not yet decided anything with Veronica, but was already dating Angelica, who moreover was the first beauty of her faculty. Then one of the guys approached Michael and said that Angelica was not a girl on his level, where the young man did not have enough finances for her, and was immediately awarded gratitude from Michael for his friendly advice. After listening to his friend, the young man began to read new messages, where Veronica wrote that she chose Mason only because her mother was now sick, and she really needed money, and without hesitation, he transferred her $10,000. At the same moment, in the women's building of the dormitory, an exclamation of surprise sounded so loud that it was heard far beyond the dormitory. That was the surprise of Veronica, who stated that as soon as she mentioned the money, Michael immediately transferred the required amount. Her friend asked if this was the same Michael with whom Veronica broke up, to which the latter answered positively, and added that she needed to get rid of Mason, who couldn't even buy her a bag and take Michael into circulation. She began quickly typing one message after another on her cell phone. She asked where the young man got so much money, what kind of relationship he had with Angelica, and whether he still had any feelings for her, for Veronica. Meanwhile, Michael, having heard the announcement that a +5 had been added to Veronica's disposition, began to think that Angelica turned out to be not as selfish as Veronica. Deciding not to answer the girl for now, the young man began to look for places where he could still spend money on girls. And so he found what he needed, an online broadcast of one famous blogger, Miranda, who accepted financial assistance for herself. Michael's joy knew no bounds, because he found himself in the right place to spend a lot of money, which he did not hesitate to do. Having seen the transfer from a user under the name Lone Wolf, Miranda, not yet familiarizing herself with the amount, sent him words and a token of gratitude. But when the amount was shown on the screen, not only the blogger girl was shocked, but also everyone who was now watching her online broadcast. The comments from the audience were not long in coming, noting the appearance of a rich man here and asking him to give him some money. But instead of responding to these meaningless comments, Michael decided that it would be nice to make another translation and press the appropriate button on the screen of his mobile phone. Meanwhile, in the office of the online broadcasting company, where Miranda worked, a real commotion began. The project manager literally flew into the boss's office without knocking, and with a wild expression on his face, shouted that some rich man had just transferred $1 million to Miranda. The boss's reaction was not long in coming, where he suggested that this was either fraud or money laundering. Meanwhile, other girls who also conducted online broadcasts from this company vied with each other to try to write to the Lone Wolf, telling each other how this rich man had just transferred $1 million to Miranda. Miranda herself could not believe that she had just received a transfer of $1 million. The director did not hesitate to appear, who with signs indicated the boss's instructions to take this rich viewer into circulation. But Miranda stated that she could not talk about it, since she herself would not let such a goldfish go anywhere. After blowing a kiss, the girl told the Lone Wolf to send her a private message so that she could receive her well-deserved gratitude. But the Lone Wolf did not respond to either this or any of the following messages, because Michael had long since fallen into a sound, healthy sleep. A new clear and warm day arrived, and the first rays of the sun illuminated the walls of the men's dormitory. Having woken up, Michael lazily read the correspondence in the general chat about how a certain rich man had appeared in online broadcasts yesterday. And while the young man was washing his face and brushing his teeth, he noted that his transfers yesterday had no effect on Miranda. Because there was no notification about adding her to the system, nor about the accrual of favor points. He was just thinking that probably, in order for the system to recognize a new girl, a personal meeting was needed when he discovered a huge number of messages from various girls who offered to meet him. However, almost immediately he noticed the commotion his comrades were making as they left the room and asked what had happened. To which they explained to him that they were rushing to an open lesson in order to have time to take the best seats, which would allow them to fully enjoy Jessica's beauty. She was an incredibly beautiful girl whom literally all the guys at school dreamed of. And Michael also remembered this girl in great detail, the location of which all the university guys dreamed of. After all, Jessica was famous as a very educated and cultured girl, developing literally in all areas. She was the chairman of the Students' Association. Her musical talent for playing the piano left no one indifferent. Jessica did not lag behind in more dynamic sports, where she diligently studied ballet and became a state champion in fencing. While Michael was turning over in his head all the merits of this university beauty, he was noticed by students sitting nearby, who assumed that he had transferred from another group, since they had not seen him here before. But the young man didn't care about them. He was thinking about how to establish contact with Jessica, who constantly keeps only in her own company. And for 3 years, no one has managed to even just talk to her. And then Veronica and her neighbor noticed him, where the neighbor whose name was Inga noted that Michael had dressed up well, which was probably intended to please Veronica. And at the same moment, it was announced that plus 10 points had been added to Veronica's disposition. Glancing sideways in the direction where the girl was, Michael noted to himself that Veronica was really some kind of superficial woman, since her position improved only because he had dressed up a little. But throwing away unnecessary thoughts, the young man tried to focus on how he could meet and add Jessica to the system, from which he was distracted by loud exclamations from the left side of the audience. It was one of the guys who suffers from excessive self-confidence and arrogance, who loudly declared that he was about to get Jessica's phone number. Jessica's attention was also attracted by such statements, which made her very surprised. But she didn't even have time to say a word when a self-confident guy, whose name was Greg, was already nearby and invited the girl to get to know each other better and exchange contacts. But his unceremonious actions only confused Jessica herself, but her roommate who was nearby was not very pleased with this behavior of the young man. Greg, without wasting any time, moved closer and closer to Jessica, saying that they would be a good couple and they should start dating. But suddenly, with a sharp movement, someone's hand pulled the guy away from the girl. It was Jessica's roommate, Kate, who raised her hand over the guy's head, accompanying her actions with the words that he should not dare to come close to her friend. Watching the sharp end of the pen above his head, Greg began hastily making excuses that he just wanted to join the student association, and Kate misunderstood him. Saying that this was the stupidest excuse to approach the girl, Kate sent the failed gentleman away. But not even a few seconds had passed before the attention of both girls was attracted by another voice, asking Jessica to add him as a friend on a social network, which surprised them a lot. It was Michael, who had already prepared his phone for exchanging contact information. Kate noted out loud that this guy was at least cute and sarcastically inquired about his intention to join the student society. But Michael said as honestly and openly as possible that he was not at all concerned about all these student associations, which prompted the question of why he needed Jessica's contacts at all. Delaying the moment of answer, the young man first said that this should be more than obvious to everyone. But without making much of a pause, he immediately added that he just wanted to date Jessica. Jessica immediately blushed at what was said and didn't know how to respond to such frankness. Moreover, all the people in the audience were shocked by Michael's directness. The result of this frankness was not long in coming and was extremely unexpected for everyone, where the unapproachable Jessica suddenly took out her phone and said that she wouldn't mind trying. Veronica looked angrily at everything that was happening, where Inga, standing next to her, added fuel to the fire, asking the girl whether Michael should be her personal dog and run after her all the time. Meanwhile, Michael, enjoying the victory, concluded that simply that in communication it was not so bad and had just borne fruit. And suddenly there was an announcement that a new target had been added in the person of Jessica, whose location was currently equal to 0. At the end of the lecture, Michael and his comrades and neighbors left the educational building, where the young people accompanying him expressed words of congratulations regarding the establishment of relations with Jessica. They asked him, after closer communication with her, to introduce them to her friends, to which Michael replied that it was too early to think and talk about it. A rather rude call made the young man turn away from the conversation and turn around. It was Greg and his henchman who expressed his misunderstanding and dissatisfaction with how Michael managed to get the contact of the first beauty of the university, to which the young man simply replied that Greg should not embarrass himself now more than what had already happened in the audience. This statement infuriated Michael's opponent, but his impulse towards physical violence was restrained by his comrades, recalling the words of the police after the last arrest that next time they would face prison. Michael was about to continue on his way when his attention was attracted by the familiar voice of Angelica, who said that she had been waiting to meet him for a very long time. This statement by the first beauty of the Faculty of Arts shocked everyone on the street. And Michael, without being at a loss, said that in order to compensate for the girl's wait, he would treat her to dinner. But the girl refused dinner and asked if the young man liked the way she looked with the things he bought her, to which Michael noticed that she looked simply amazing, especially with that handbag. Veronica listened to all this, huddled among the crowd of students, feeling feelings of jealousy and annoyance raging inside her. Meanwhile, Angelica took Michael's arm, and together they walked away from the walls of the university, continuing their dialogue and leaving behind the shocked crowd. And Greg, also watching what was happening, literally with tears in his eyes, wondered what was wrong with him.
Veronica couldn't stop her tears either, asking herself many questions, including why Angelica was better than her and why Michael made such a choice.
The time was approaching evening, and the sun gradually began to sink lower and lower. Angelica suddenly stopped her movement and turning to face Michael, showed him her recent work. It was a portrait of Michael, where the girl explained that she had stayed up late to finish it. She insisted that the young man take the gift, where she stated that she would not forgive him if he threw away the portrait. The young man was shocked by this attitude, because this was the first gift from a girl in his entire life. Satisfied with the reaction, Angelica smiled sweetly and asked if the young man liked the portrait. For a while, Michael just silently looked at the portrait, not showing any emotion. But gradually, some thoughts began to form in his head. He remembered the girl's previous attention to him regarding his clothes and his appearance, the air kiss, and now this gift, and decided that these were just tricks on her part so that he would fall into her network. The young man concluded that Angelica specially developed such a plan immediately after he spent several thousand on her. Smiling evilly, Michael concluded that he was no longer the same as before and would not fall for all these tricks. The girl, observing the changes in the facial expressions of the young man, mentally noted that he did not look joyful. Finally, Michael, portraying the most indifferent expression on his face, asked why he needed this picture. This reaction of the young man greatly confused the girl, who simply did not know how to respond to this. And Michael suddenly shortened the distance and asked how the girl intended to pay for all the gifts he had given. And at the same moment, with a deft movement, he snatched the piece of paper with the portrait from Angelica's hands. With his other hand, he stopped the movement of the girl's hand which tried to take away the sheet of paper. Indecently shortening the distance again, he said that he liked the girl herself more than her gift, which made her cheeks turn pink. Angelica felt how she literally dissolved in the most pleasant feelings when this young man was nearby when he touched her. And at that moment, the voiceover announced to Michael that +5 points had been added to the girl's disposition. Pleased with himself, Michael was preparing to continue his onslaught, which was already bringing the girl into ecstasy. But suddenly their almost complete embrace was broken by a guy who rushed between them. He, turning to Angelica, reproached her for refusing to go for a walk with him under the pretext of going for a manicure with a friend, while she was hugging some stranger. Unable to restrain himself, this young man expressed one claim after another. Pointing at Michael, he stated that she only lets this guy hug her because he has money. And Michael was very familiar with this behavior of the young man, and he immediately realized that this young man was a fan of Angelica. Meanwhile, the girl, enraged by the guy's behavior, began to shout angrily that he was no one to her at all, and he shouldn't care about who she hugs or what she does. But the escalation of the conflict was interrupted by the intervention of Michael, who introduced himself to the guy, asked his name, and inquired about how long he had been trying to court Angelica. The young man replied that his name was Tommy. He was also studying at the Faculty of Arts, and had been trying to attract the girl's attention for more than 6 months. This immediately reminded Michael of himself, where he had been chasing the same girl for 3 whole years. He told this story to his new acquaintance, telling how he had to work 4 jobs and eat whatever he could in order to satisfy the selfish needs of his passion. And finishing his sad story, he added that in the end, this girl still chose to get into someone else's Mercedes. Tommy was clearly shocked by such a story, which left him without any hope of the attention of a girl like Angelica. And Michael reinforced what was said with good friendly advice, saying that those who do this to them only motivate them to become better. After which he urged him to return to the hostel and forget about Angelique, who herself would come running to him sooner or later, having seen his successes in life. The girl did not understand at all what was happening now, watching the action in surprise. She approached Michael saying that Tommy was just an acquaintance of hers, and she had never even considered him as a romantic partner. To which the young man replied that he did not care at all about what the girl might have had with this guy in the past. And then Michael, saying that the girl did not respect either herself or him, began to tear the portrait right in front of her face, causing great amazement in the girl. Having torn a sheet of paper into small pieces and throwing them into the air, Michael turned around and walked away from the girl, saying that until she understood her surroundings and learned to communicate, it was better for them not to meet. He thought to himself that he was very interested in how the girl would react to such an attitude on his part and what she would do. And the girl's thoughts were filled with memories of how Michael treated her at their first meeting. After all, no one had ever been so kind and condescending to her. With tears in her eyes, the girl concluded that Michael really liked her, and now she ruined everything. And it was announced to the departing Michael that plus 5 points had been added to Angelica's disposition. Studying statistics along the way, the young man concluded that the worse you treat a girl, the more she begins to like her. He decided that he was done with Angelica for now and needed to start winning over Jessica.